Welcome to CES 2021. My name is Aaron Jefferson, VP of Product, and I'm here today to talk to you about needs for speed, enabling highway autonomy. And I want to key in on that word speed. Many of the systems today are limited in terms of the ODD or the speed capability of the system, whether it's level 2 or level 2 plus. Those systems have the limited, say, sensing and perception technology to enable you to take your hands off the wheel, take your eyes off the road, and really be able to drive autonomously. First, let me give you a little background about Luminar. Some of our company highlights, that is. So we came up with this really great breakthrough technology for LiDAR, really enabling us to see long distance, high resolution sensing technology to enable highway autonomy. Our belief is that, and our vision is to make highway autonomy safe and ubiquitous. Safety being a key goal there, and ubiquitous meaning available for all. So if we look at overall our integrated autonomous and safety solution, we are the world's first autonomous solution for series production. There are a lot of different activities for development and spinning systems that aren't really designed to go into a vehicle for production. From day one, our concept was development activity leading to a production platform, which includes all the aspects of what it takes to qualify for automotive grade. We're not just built on sensor technology, we're also built on our software. What our sensor does is really unlock, I would say, a clarity of the environment and the environmental space more than any other sensor that's out there. But with that clarity, you can take that information and really develop software and unlock features and capabilities that have never been on the market before. And the key thing is you don't want to just provide the function or the feature, but you also want to do it in a robust way with great confidence, and that's what our sensor delivers. And then we have our top tier, which is essentially the software stack that enables the functionality, path planning and vehicle control. We have the capability to develop that. We're working with several partners to develop that, and we work in conjunction with our tier 1. So it really just depends on the model being used by our end customer, but essentially we are being built and we are partnering and we're developing a solution that goes from the sensing all the way to the full stack development, releasing the function at a vehicle level. Now, if you take a look at the market, we like to look at it in two halves, I would say. One is ADAS. ADAS includes everything from level 0, basic AEB, all the way up to, say, the systems you see really on the market today, level 2 plus systems, where the driver still has to remain engaged, maybe can take their hands off, but their eyes always have to remain on the vehicle, on the road. What we've noticed in this space, and if you look at the numbers on the bottom left there, it hasn't really been effective at reducing the number of fatalities. Still over 1 million fatalities globally, still tons, I think 50 million accidents. And if you look at the United States in particular, 35,000 deaths on the highway every year. And that's a real problem, and that number has remained stagnant for a while. Our belief is that with LiDAR, you can greatly improve the effectiveness of these systems and really start to hit those numbers and knock those down. The other half of the market is autonomous driving. And autonomous really means driver out of the loop. Anything under that is automated or ADAS. For autonomous driving, we are really looking at unlocking the capability of allowing the driver to disengage and do that in a safe manner, meaning the vehicle knows what to do. It can detect objects or threats well ahead of its path. It can understand the maneuverability and what it can and can't do. And it has the redundancy and the safety behind it to really deliver the capability. So when we look at those two halves, we say, okay, there's a really great opportunity to greatly improve active safety, and we call that proactive safety. And then we are the ones, we believe, to unlock the autonomous space, and we're really focused on level 3, 4 highway. Again, because once you get to the city and you're talking level 4 or 5 and no steering wheels and pedals and brakes, you get into a situation where you have an extremely difficult ODD. Over time, we believe it will be solved, but the immediate benefit to an end consumer, to someone buying a private vehicle, is the highway autonomy. So next, I'd like to talk to you about our industry-leading performance. We've talked a lot about unlocking autonomy, and it's important that we understand in terms of where Luminar is in relation to the rest of the market. If you look at the graph to the right, this will really explain how we founded and designed our architecture from the beginning. We knew that the problem to solve was high resolution at a long distance, and we couldn't allow for that trade-off. if you look at the rest of the market, and for a lot of reasons, architecture selection, solid state selection, other things of that nature, everybody has to make a trade-off. And what you don't see here is also field of view. There are some companies that can see really far, say 150 meters. However, their resolution is extremely low. What that means is if there are two objects out there 150 meters away, they're going to detect one. What they're going to highlight in their specification is that they have a range detection of 150 meters. But without the resolution, it really doesn't make much of a difference. Same way the other way. If you were to say, hey, I have the resolution, the high resolution, I can detect two small objects separately from one another, that's great, but if you can only do that at 50 meters, well, then I can do that with the radar. So do I need a LiDAR in my system? So it's really important that we provided the high resolution and the range, and also the field of view. This just digs into that a little bit further. I won't go into too much detail, but essentially if you look at the competition and you look at what's required to deliver into the market, right? All these different factors play a part, and if you're missing any of these, it really does hinder your chances at delivering the performance and the say automotive grade product that the market needs. And so this is just, again, a deeper dive into that look. Some of this, if you look at the competitor side, some of it's because of the selected 905 wavelength, some of it is because of the selected architecture, and that really goes into why we selected what we did. We built it from the standpoint of what problem are we solving, and let's not make compromises around certain capability that we know is going to unlock the capability in the market. Speaking of those architectures, if you look at our system, we really built things from the ground up, as was mentioned before. If you look at our structure, it is the scanning, the ROIC, and the laser. It's a very simple architecture, again, that allows us to see all the information that we need in the scene, versus what we're typically compared to, or have been compared to in the past, was a spinning LiDAR, which required several lasers, several receivers, and yeah, there's a ton of data there, but there's a ton of cost associated with that. And while that has developed some, it still isn't an architecture that will get you an affordable solution, a robust solution in the market that you can easily create an auto-grade product and then sell into the market. It's one of the main reasons you really don't see any spinning LiDAR in any production vehicles. And it's also where we understood there were limitations, and we wanted to make sure that we set up our architecture to solve the problem, but also think about scalability, think about cost, think about manufacturability and production, and we've done a really good job with that. We really love this slide. This is one of our favorite slides from our product group. It is requirements that matter, and essentially what we want to explain to everybody is everything on this page matters. If you drop one ball here, you essentially limit the chances of your product being effective and going into production. The top row is really around performance. You really want to bring that level 3, level 4, hands off, eyes off value to the consumer. You need that full top row. Range, resolution, fidelity and the precision of the information, the right field of view, the weather performance. We need all of those pieces to work well. What we're finding now is the bottom row, when you really start to get into discussions with customers, you really start to explain to them what you have and what you can deliver. They also have a concern from the bottom row. How viable is your supply chain? What's your manufacturing strategy? Do you understand how to manufacture this so where you can get yields that make sense and that will allow everybody to feel safe about the product being developed? Is it quality product? Is it automotive grade? There are a lot of companies that really focus on the performance, and a lot of companies that fall short there, and they're not even yet at the position where they can think about the bottom row. When you talk to the customers, the premium OEMs, the volume OEMs, every OEM that understands what it takes to put a quality product into the market, especially the automotive market, that bottom row is just as important. We were awarded a Volvo win, and I want to be clear, this Volvo win is a production award for SOP 2022. This is not an experiment, this is not a potential award, this is a solid award, and the nice thing about it is with Volvo. Volvo has a history of releasing new technology into the market, and ADAS and other places, and again, their DNA is safety. And so for us, it's the perfect partner to collaborate and work with, co-develop, and deliver some pretty sweet technology and deliver the level 4 highway autonomy that we believe our consumers want. In addition to Volvo, we also have our Daimler Truck Award, which is our activity to really work with Daimler Truck and again, their AV partner Torque, and deliver automated driving functionality and capability. We're able to come alongside them and really unlock what's necessary to deliver highway autonomy. And then lastly is a commercial agreement with Mobileye. And this award and this partnership is really important because if you look at where Mobileye started, it's a similar story in terms of a startup growing and transitioning into essentially an automotive supplier and the leading automotive supplier for ADAS computer vision technology with very unique hardware capability and really the heart and the science behind what they're doing is their computer vision algorithms. Those mated together have really done an amazing job in pushing the market forward and delivering ADAS and certain levels of level 2 automated highway driving function. So to work alongside them, to be recognized as the LiDAR leader and the chosen company to partner with to deliver the new capability for robotaxi is really great, and we're looking forward to that partnership continuing on. One unique thing about the market is a lot of people talk about data and data collection. They really look to the, say, robotaxi spaces and a lot of the data being collected out in the market. If you look at the robotaxi space, there are a lot of big players, a lot of money invested, but they are dedicated routes. There's only a certain amount of data you can collect in those spaces. You run the same routes, you collect the same weather data, you collect the same corner cases. We believe that by 2025, we could have 1 million vehicles on the road. The nice thing about that iteration is it doesn't take a change in hardware. Our resolution and our range and our capability today is going to be good enough for future upgrades of performance and time tomorrow. We developed a single product that can stretch into each vertical. So whether it's pass car, commercial vehicle, robotaxi, we are not changing our architecture for each customer. We have developed a product that we feel is a solution for the market to unlock that long range, high resolution capability, to unlock level 3, level 4 autonomy. So let's talk about, a bit more specific about the capability and the technology and what we unlock. A dark tire on the road is one of the most widely used use cases from our customers. I want to be able to detect this dark object, 5% reflectivity, as far away as possible, 200 meters when I'm traveling at high speeds, and understand that it's there, it's in my lane, and I want to avoid it. And this is just a tire. It could include a tire with the actual wheel or rim, but essentially it's, can you detect these small objects? We like to differentiate the fact that we don't necessarily have to classify it as a tire. We just have to understand what it is in terms of its size, that it's in our way, and is it a threat for our driving functionality. If you look at what we've done in terms of evaluating and analyzing things, it really is a good measure of, can I detect an object in time for me to actually make a decision? Is it drive overable? Do I need to maneuver around it? We also used, say, a wooden pallet. So if a wooden pallet falls off of a truck and you can't see that, or if it's on the road, you want to be able to avoid that. When we look at our performance today, we're probably detecting, say, a tire around 200 meters is when we first detect the object and we say, okay, there's something here we want to avoid. And then when we really understand and feel good about a target is when we have 6 points on target. I'll go back a slide. If you look at our nearest competitor from what we're doing on Iris, we're approximately 125 meters ahead of anybody else on what they can detect in terms of that small tire on the road. That 125 meters alone is far enough to, I'd say, be a problem for others to be able to detect it and then do something about it. That's what our customers want, and that's what we plan to deliver. So another aspect of our design and what we're seeing in the market is, do I have to put the LiDAR in the crown of the vehicle? We chose, and we worked very closely with Volvo to basically establish the fact that in the crown of the vehicle is where you really want your LiDAR to be able to see as much of the environment as possible. If you think about yourself as a driver, you're in a position where you can see a fair amount of degrees, a field of view around yourself, especially in front of you. And we're not laying down in the vehicle with our head in the bumper or in the grill. We really have a vantage point where we can see the road, we can see crossing objects, we can see the lanes in front of us, the objects in front of us, and that's what we felt we needed for LiDAR to get the most benefit out of it. Here we show a few of the trade-offs and understand that if we're trying to see obstacles on the road, if we're trying to see trucks, cars, motorcycles, things of that nature, we can still do that. We can do that in the grill at the same distance. If you have a clear sight of a road ahead of you, then you can see the same object, whether it's in the crown or the roof of the vehicle, as it is in the bumper of the vehicle or in the grill of the vehicle. However, your vantage point up does give you some advantages. The first advantage is really the road and drivable free space. So we essentially double the drivable free space if we go from being in the grille to being in the crown of the vehicle. And what that really means is from your vantage point, you can see more of the ground, you have a better angle, you can understand the road topology, so, you know, sinkholes, huge potholes, things of that nature. You can understand what that road is. And then in terms of free space, which is really important when you talk about highway autonomy, especially level 3, if there's something that you want to avoid and you want to safely pull over to the side of the road, you actually need to know that there's a side of the road to pull over into. And the longer you can see that, the more important it is. So we really believe, again, that that vantage point provided, and you can see from the data that it does extend the free space capability. The other thing is the lane markers. Lane markers is important because I'd say it's one of the most neglected aspects of automated driving that people don't think about. Usually people think about avoiding small objects, but where most level 2 systems fail today is when they can't detect a lane, they throw the control back over to the driver, and now you have to take back control of the wheel, or you have to be paying better attention because either that camera was blinded or the lanes were faint and the confidence level was low. What the LiDAR does is really allow you to detect those lane markings, detect road edges really well, and if you're low on the ground, there's only so far you can see. If you're high on the crown, on the roofline of the vehicle, then again, you have more of a vertical aspect and you have a better vantage point to be able to detect those lines. So we're talking from 75 meters of lane detection up to 150 meters of lane detection. And that is, again, that's significant because if you want to identify an object and classify it as in your lane or not, you want to do that as long as possible so that that object stops. You don't stop inadvertently if it's in an adjacent lane, and if it is in your lane, that you appropriately stop. So either way, we really feel like, again, that is the correct vantage point. However, we also understand that there are cycle plans to vehicles, and being able to design a vehicle with the LiDAR in the crown takes some decision making and some time. So for those that require it in the grille, we share our performance specs. And again, what we are able to do is still detect those small objects far away such that, in an automated driving scenario, we still understand what's ahead of us as far out as possible, and we decide to drive over or avoid it. And again, that's the critical measure that some of our customers expect from us. So I want to talk a little bit about the point cloud itself before I get into the perception software and what the software can do. Your perception software is only as good as your point cloud or your data you're getting from the LiDAR. So if you take a look at this image, this is essentially an image on the highway, and it very clearly highlights a few things. One, the vehicles ahead. We put bounding boxes around it, but that's based off of point cloud data. It clearly identifies the lane markers, which helps us identify lanes, the guardrails on the side of the highway, and then also the infrastructure around you, whether it's the opposite road, brush, trees, things of that nature. So it shows you the granularity and the clarity of the data that we get into our perception algorithms. Another thing to point here is, what can you see and how far can you see it? So if you take a look at the first thing, it's really, what's the road topology? What am I on? What does that road look like? And out to 75 meters, again, this is at the crown of the vehicle. Out to 75 meters, you can really see the performance of the road, understand exactly what it is, what it's doing, curves and all different aspects of the road. We have that data coming back to us. And then if you say, okay, well, what's next? Beyond that, you have, say, 150 meters where you actually detect lanes. We talked about at the crown of the vehicle, you can detect lanes out to 150 meters. What that really does is allow you to identify what lane you're in, as well as what lane those objects are in. So all those boxes that you see there and all those vehicles, we can do a lane assignment for each of those out to 150 meters, mainly because we have the capability to detect the lanes reliably and confidently out to that range. And then if you look at vehicles, motorcycles, things of that nature, we can see those out to 250. And it's not just a first detection and, hey, there might be something out there. It is actually identified as a cluster of points that equates to a vehicle, whether it's a car, a motorcycle, truck. It's our ability to be able to see that far and understand, again, the lane, not necessarily the lane assignment, but exactly what it is and the fact that it's something that we want to track. So once we know that there's an object out there and we can understand, and we'll talk about segmentation in a minute, we can understand what it is, then we can track it and we can basically check for it as a threat as we're driving with it, as we're going past it, whatever the case may be. But your point cloud is the foundation for what you do in software. Another aspect of our point cloud, which is really neat, is the reflectance and the resolution of the reflectance. Imagine that you're on the road, your headlights go out, and it's completely dark. You can only see as far as your eyes can see through the darkness. We don't have a reflectivity measure that comes back to us, but the LiDAR does. So the LiDAR can basically see the scene in the same way that we see with our eyes, but without the light. And it's the reflectivity of all aspects of the road. The road edge is different than the ground, it's different than the grass, it's different than the trees. The lane markings, vehicles, license plates, tail lights. So all these things give us, I'd say, a third dimension of data that we can then use to develop and further develop our algorithms. So if you look here, you'll see that there are vehicles detected on the right side or in front of the vehicle where we're seeing tail lights and license plates. We can see that. We can see those vehicles, whether it's dark or whether it's daylight. There's a reflectivity measure that comes back and allows us to perform at an even better level than, say, cameras, where we're looking at 2D information and are really dependent on light source to be able to detect objects. What we really love about this aspect is that it clearly shows our ability to also perform at in inclement weather or at nighttime. So it goes back to availability. If it's dark and your lights aren't on, or say you have a malfunction, if it's cloudy, if it's dark, rainy, foggy, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There's a reflectance measure that helps us determine what's in front of us, and then helps us control the vehicle still. So we're not limited in terms of availability, and we're not limited, say, by our visibility and what our vehicle performance can be. We talked about weather a bit. This is an image of penetrating rain, and you see the rain level. So this is a heavy rain that we're showing here. The camera image is a bit skewed because typically you won't have water drops on a camera that's behind the windscreen, so you'll clean that off. But still, we've all driven in heavy rain where our visibility is limited to maybe a few cars in front of us, or it's at least heavily restricted. Whereas if you look at the LiDAR can see further out, and we're at 1550, so we have less effect by weather, and we're able to see objects, obstacles, road edges, lanes. All the things are important for us to continue driving. Today, I think a lot of people disengage systems when it's raining or when they're not comfortable because they don't trust the system that is driving them, even for a level 2 system. Our goal is that we continue the same performance, maybe a slower performance, maybe you want to degrade or slow down, because it's not the same safety level to drive at 80 miles per hour as it is at 40 miles per hour in rain. So we all acknowledge that. But we still want to be able to detect and understand our environment and perform accordingly in an automated driving mode or an autonomous driving mode. The next thing we're looking at is penetrating snow. And this is a really neat picture. What's really unique about our system is at 1550 and our high range and our high resolution, what we're able to do is detect the snow and not necessarily be distracted or have our signal dispersed by the snow. So we detect the snow where there is snow, and then where there's not snow, we detect the object. And so what you see here is an image of a snowy day with the home behind that and the trees and the brush there. We can basically detect where the snow falling. You can see that snow falling there, and then we detect the object behind it. So it really does show you that we're not worried about weather degrading our performance in terms of our detection. Of course, heavier snow, you have more detection of snow, but the goal is that we still get enough points on the object, whether it's a vehicle, for the lanes, road edge, things of that nature, and we can still perform and deliver the autonomous driving function. Another good example is fog. I really like this one in particular because for fog, there's different varying levels of fog, of course, but the moderate fog is where you have a little bit of confidence in what you see, but you're not really sure about what's out there, and you're a little bit more hesitant to maybe move slower, but not as restricted as a heavy fog situation. So in this instance, even with the camera, you can see the vehicle off to the left. You can see some resemblance of lane edge. You may be able to see, may not be able to see road markings, but you definitely usually can't see the divided road sign, and you just have a limitation in terms of your range and your distance. But again, with LiDAR, we can see the image, we can see the information, be it the LiDAR point cloud directly, be it the reflectance, and we get the right amount of data that says, hey, this is a road, these are the boundaries, here are the poles, here's a car that's parked there. We can understand whether it's moving or not, and you can also see the divided road sign, so you know that there's a split coming up. So what's really important is that, again, in a moderate scenario, you might have some confidence, but the LiDAR has the same amount of confidence. The next image is of, say, penetrating heavy fog. And for heavy fog, if you've ever been in this driving scenario, it makes you a little bit nervous, mainly because you really can't see what's in front of you. What's worse is you don't know what the objects in front of you are doing. Are they braking? Are they slowing down? Is somebody getting over in your lane? Things of that nature. For me, this scenario and say dust, a heavy dust storm where you really can't see what's in front of you and you have no idea if somebody's braking because they're nervous. You know, those scenarios where you're almost completely blind, but you can't stop because you know you have people behind you and they can't see either, so you need to proceed forward. This is where I think our LiDAR really shines in terms of being able to see the lane markings and the lanes out to a certain distance to be able to detect objects. If you look, there's a car that's essentially detected because of the data, the signal returns from the LiDAR at 80 meters. And so it's really important that, you know, we would all want to degrade our speed. We would all want to be more cautious, but you definitely want to be able to see beyond what your sight and beyond what the camera can see. I want to know what's going on. I want to know if a vehicle is stopped ahead. I want to know if there's road ahead or if something has changed. And so what's really impressive is, and these are real world scenarios. These aren't things that don't happen. And ironically, you know, with the camera, it would basically say, hey, system not available, driver, you must take control. And if you've ever driven, say, East Coast, Virginia, things of that nature, you can go up a hill and be in fog and then come down and be out of fog. So that toggling back and forth of the system enabled, system disabled, we don't want that. We really want our LiDAR to be able to function no matter what the environment states. And this is a good example of, even in a heavy fog situation, we can understand what's ahead of us and we can basically enable the vehicle to act accordingly. Now we want to talk a little bit about perception. So that's the point cloud information. We get really solid point cloud information, which then helps us deliver the function. And the perception here is understand a complete scene. This is like a first understanding of what is all around me. What am I looking at? What does the system understand? What do I need to do? And what we do is call that semantic segmentation, which is basically what our mind does anyway. We identify, this is the road, that's a rail, up there is a bridge, that is a vehicle, this is a motorcycle. It's not just necessarily classification, but it's the separation of the different objects. Even if you see a pedestrian in front of a vehicle, you understand that there's a pedestrian there and a vehicle, and you don't miss the pedestrian. That's what semantic segmentation is. Developing a complete understanding of the scene and the environment around you, so then you know what to do with that data. The other thing about LiDAR that's different from camera is we are basically getting information in 3D. So we know the size of an object, angle, and we know the range or the distance of that object, which is extremely important. It's not just that it's there and we're looking for an image to get bigger over time or smaller over time. We're measuring the exact distance from that object, so we know, are we approaching it and it's slowing down? Are they moving away and speeding up? Typical systems today use a combination of camera and radar fusion to do that. We can do that all in one sensor, and that 3D data gives us all the information we need to be able to unlock the perception and the control functionality for autonomous driving. The other aspect of our perception software is being able to detect and classify objects. This becomes very important because you want to understand, again, we talked about semantic segmentation and understanding the entire scene. Now it is, what is it, and do I need to pay attention to it or not? Do I care about it, or do I allow my algorithm to go look and work it and worry about other things? So it's the detection of vehicles, pedestrians, road edge, fixed objects, crosswalks, things of that nature, where you can actually really detect and classify and then put, say, a confidence level to whether or not you need to do something about it or not. Again, this is only unlocked and enabled by the point cloud that we provide. It's the same thing with the camera. A camera does the same thing. It sees things, it classifies objects as pedestrians or vehicles. But the nice thing about our data is we get that understanding as well as the range estimation and velocity estimation of that data, all in the same sensor. So when you think about the highway, I want to know what's out there. I want to be able to classify it as a vehicle, as a motorcycle, as a pedestrian. That also tells me how quickly things can move out of my way. It tells me a lot of information, the same way we use our information today. If I see a pedestrian on the side of the road and I'm traveling at a certain speed and they're far enough away, I know I don't have to worry about them as an obstacle coming in front of my vehicle. Classifying them as that, in my mind, is the same way that we classify it as a LiDAR-based system and understand, again, what are threats and what are not. So very important that we have that capability within our system. The next set of information is the road information. And we talked a bit about our ability to extend the availability of lanes and be able to see lanes. Ultimately, you want to understand where your lane is going, where it's headed, so that you can control the vehicle safely. Are you coming up on a curve? Is there an intersection? Whatever you need to know about the lane and topology of the road is very important. From a highway perspective, highway driving perspective, I want to know what's in my lane, how far it's out there, and am I approaching it or is it moving away from me? One of the more difficult things for a level 2 system and for an ADAS system in general is for a camera to understand that there's an object ahead, but not necessarily be able to understand whether or not it's in the lane or if it's in an adjacent lane, just because of the ego motion of the vehicle and not necessarily being able to measure the location. It can estimate the location, but it can't measure. Usually you use radar to understand the steering wheel angle, where you're headed, your heading, how far an object is, and you try to fuse that data and come up with an estimation for where it is in your lane. The nice thing about our LiDAR is we're detecting lanes real time with our 3D data. We're detecting the vehicle real time with our 3D data. So we get coordinate data back that tells us exactly if that vehicle is in our lane and in our ego path based off of the vehicle steering control information. So with that, we have the ability to understand maybe 150 meters away that this object is out there, it's in my lane, and if I'm approaching that vehicle quickly, maybe I need to make a lane change now before I come up on that vehicle. Or if there's a stop vehicle, or if there's a vehicle that's slowing down, we're coming up on that vehicle too quickly. I don't necessarily have to figure out over time if that vehicle is in my lane. I know exactly that it is, and then I can basically enable the vehicle to do something about it. Very unique capability with LiDAR, very unique capability with our LiDAR, because again, we see much further and we see in enough time for you to make a safe maneuver and allow that vehicle to make a safe decision. Safe autonomy, don't forget that. Here's an example, high range vehicle to lane association. So this is just a small example where there's a vehicle out there, and again, we're giving it a lane assignment. We're not dependent on other sensors to help give that assignment. And again, we can do that further out. You see the further ranges, 110, 145. We have that capability. And what it really does is makes us a wholly owned sensor that can deliver highway autonomy in terms of lane, object detection, and understanding of the complete scene. So I've said a lot about Luminar, LiDAR, and our system, what we unlock, what we enable, long range, high resolution sensing, really the only sensor on the market that can really unlock and deliver that capability. If you look at everything we've talked about today, it's what problem do we solve? And the problem we solve is the hands-off, eyes-off functionality on the highway. We focus on highway because that is the most value to the consumer today. We really feel like we're enabling level 3, level 4 driving. And again, with our partnership and our business awards with Volvo, Daimler Truck, and with Mobileye, that should be clear that we are the market leader there, and we have the great foundation on which to grow upon. We also talk about the performance of active safety. My focus today was on highway autonomy. What's important to remember is that safety is the underlying requirement there, safe and ubiquitous. So when we talk about high-speed driving, we want to make sure that we can safely control the vehicle, that we can safely brake the vehicle. When you talk about existing systems today for ADAS, a lot of those are low speed. We're trying to mitigate the accident, lessen the severity. We want to eliminate things. If the LiDAR can see in inclement weather, if it can see during nighttime conditions, if it can see in fog and things of that nature, why shouldn't your AEB system work in those conditions as well? Matter of fact, it may be more pertinent that it works and detects things earlier because the ground is slicker or the system is compromised because of the environmental conditions. So the earlier I can detect something in my way as a threat, the better I can do something about that. So proactive safety is something we don't want to forget about. And lastly, I want to reiterate the all requirements matter. Again, you'll hear a lot of noise in the market around range and resolution and what these different capabilities are. We talked about the top row, which is really the performance, every aspect of performance, range, resolution, fidelity, field of view, weather performance. It's all important. And then you can't forget about the bottom row. We are the automotive grade series production program for Volvo. So that is going to be, the product that I would say is going to really unlock the capability at a consumer level that is robust, safe, and has high quality. We have the advanced manufacturability there so that we'll get the yield and the performance that we need in order to continue to supply the automotive market with scale as we continue to grow our volume and our capability there. And it's also important that we understand in order to deliver that, it takes an organization that is sized and skilled for that. So you have to have the right capability in terms of quality systems. You have to have the right engineering resources. You have to have the right leadership and mindset. We are delivering highway autonomy. Thank you for joining us in this special presentation today. To learn more, please visit luminartech.com. Thank you.